Elena Castellanos thought the scratching sounds were just old pipes settling. Her dog knew better. What lay beneath the floorboards of her inherited apartment would unravel a conspiracy that had been buried for 40 years and cost her everything she thought she knew about the person she'd loved most. Elena Castellanos stood in the darkness of her bedroom at 3:14 a.m., watching her dog for the sixth night in a row. Luna, a 4-year-old border collie with one blue eye and one brown, sat rigid in the far corner near the old wardrobe. Her ears were pinned flat against her skull, hackles raised in a line down her spine that Elena could see even in the dim light from the street lamp outside. The dog's growl was low and continuous, a sound that vibrated through the quiet apartment like a warning bell that only Elena could hear. This wasn't normal behavior. Luna was a therapy dog, trained to remain calm in chaotic situations. She'd worked with Elena at the Children's Hospital for 3 years without a single incident. But for the past week, something in this corner had transformed her into a different animal entirely. Tense, afraid, fixated. Elena had tried everything she could think of. She'd checked for rodents, called an exterminator who found nothing, examined the electrical outlets for faulty wiring, even moved furniture around to see if that would break whatever spell had taken hold of her dog. The building's superintendent, a man named Dmitri who seemed perpetually annoyed by tenant requests, had shrugged when she'd mentioned it and muttered something about old buildings making strange sounds before walking away. But Luna wasn't reacting to sounds. Elena knew her dog too well for that. This was something else. Something specific to this exact spot, where the wall met the floor beneath the wardrobe that had belonged to her aunt. The apartment had been Aunt Sophia's. Sophia Castellanos had lived in this rent-controlled studio in Queens for 39 years before her death 7 months ago. She'd left it to Elena in a will that had surprised everyone in the family. Elena had been close to her aunt, sure, but not closer than Sophia's own children. Yet the apartment, her only real asset besides a small savings account, had gone to Elena with a short note. "You'll know what to do when the time comes." At the time, Elena had thought it was just Sophia's way of helping her. Elena had been drowning in student loan debt from nursing school, living paycheck to paycheck in a shared apartment in Brooklyn that cost more than she made in a month. A rent-controlled studio, even a small one like this, was a lifeline. She'd moved in 3 months ago, grateful and confused in equal measure. Now, standing in the dark watching Luna's obsessive focus on that corner, Elena felt the first cold thread of understanding. Sophia had left her something more than an apartment. She'd left her something hidden. Elena approached the corner slowly, speaking softly to Luna. "Easy, girl. It's okay. Let me look." She knelt on the worn hardwood floor and ran her hands along the baseboard where Luna's attention was fixed. At first, she felt nothing unusual. Just old painted wood, slightly warped from decades of exposure to changing temperatures and humidity. But then her fingernail caught on something. A seam, barely visible, painted over carefully, but there. A line where the baseboard separated from the wall in a way that wasn't natural. Her heart began to pound. She went to the kitchen and returned with a butter knife, the only tool she had on hand. Luna backed away as Elena wedged the knife into the gap and applied gentle pressure. The baseboard creaked, resisted, then suddenly popped free with a sound like a bone cracking. Behind it was darkness. Not the gray emptiness of a normal wall cavity, but a deliberate space. A hiding place. Elena grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut into the opening, illuminating a crawl space that extended along the entire length of the wall, perhaps 18 inches deep. And there, pushed back as far as it would go, sat a metal document box. The kind fireproof safes that people kept birth certificates and passports in. It was covered in a thick layer of dust that suggested it hadn't been touched in years. Her hands trembled as she reached in and pulled it out. The box was heavier than she expected, maybe 12 pounds, and cold to the touch despite the warmth of the apartment. There was no lock, just a simple latch that opened with a metallic click that sounded too loud in the quiet room. Inside were papers, dozens of them, organized in folders and bound with rubber bands that crumbled into dust when she touched them. Elena carried the box to her bed and turned on the lamp, flooding the small room with yellow light. Luna jumped up beside her, finally calm now that the box had been removed from its hiding place. Elena began to read. The first document was a lease agreement dated March 1984. The header read Queensbridge Residential Properties, Building 7, Unit 4C. This building. This apartment. Tenant name, Margaret Wu. Monthly rent, $385. The signature at the bottom was shaky, the handwriting of someone elderly or ill. Attached to it with a paper clip was a small photograph, colors faded to that distinctive orange-yellow tint of old Polaroids. It showed an elderly Chinese woman standing in front of the building's entrance, wearing a blue cardigan and smiling uncertainly at the camera. Someone had written on the back in blue ink, Mrs. Wu, final day, September 1984. Elena's chest tightened. She set that document aside and picked up the next one. Another lease, dated June 1985. Tenant, Robert Morrison. Monthly rent, $410. Another photograph, another note on the back, Mr. Morrison, displaced, February 1986. She went through them one by one, her sense of unease growing with each page. 19 leases spanning from 1984 to 2004. 19 different tenants in buildings across this neighborhood. 19 photographs with notes about departures that seemed coordinated, planned, forced. Beneath the leases, she found a stack of official letters. They were all on the same letterhead, Queensbridge Residential Properties, with an address in Manhattan that Elena recognized as being in a wealthy neighborhood. Each letter was addressed to a different tenant and dated shortly before their noted departure. Elena picked up the one addressed to Margaret Wu. Dear Mrs. Wu, we regret to inform you that due to critical building renovations and compliance with updated city safety codes, your lease will not be renewed beyond September 30th, 1984. You are required to vacate the premises within 60 days of this notice. As compensation for this inconvenience, Queensbridge Residential Properties will provide a one-time relocation payment of $1,200. Please contact our office to arrange final inspection and key return. Sincerely, Harrison Pemberton, Managing Director, Queensbridge Residential Properties. The second letter was nearly identical, addressed to Robert Morrison. Then another to someone named Patricia Santos. All the same formal language, all the same 60-day window, all the same modest payment that wouldn't cover even 2 months' rent at market rates. But it was the signature that made Elena's blood run cold. Harrison Pemberton. She knew that name. Everyone in New York real estate knew that name. Harrison Pemberton had been one of the city's most successful developers in the 1980s and 90s. His company had transformed neighborhoods across Queens and Brooklyn, buying up old buildings and replacing them with luxury condos and mixed-use developments. He'd been profiled in the New York Times, honored by the mayor, donated millions to arts and education. His obituary from 2021 had described him as a visionary who'd helped modernize New York's housing stock. Elena's hands were shaking now. She set the letters aside and found what lay beneath them. Pages and pages of handwritten notes on yellow legal paper, the edges brown with age. The handwriting was familiar. It was Aunt Sophia's, the same careful script that had appeared on birthday cards and grocery lists throughout Elena's childhood. The notes were dated, organized by year, and they told a story that made Elena feel sick. Margaret Wu, Building 7, Unit 4C. Age 73. Forced out October 1984 for renovations. Building never renovated. Sold to Meridian Development Corporation 4 months later for $1.8 million. Mrs. Wu moved to Flushing, shared apartment with her daughter's family. Died November 1988. Heart failure. Doctor said it was stress. Robert Morrison, Building 7, Unit 2A. Age 68. Retired postal worker. Same forced eviction, same excuse. Building sold to Meridian, March 1986. Mr. Morrison couldn't find affordable housing. Moved to Pennsylvania to live with his son. Lost his medical providers, his community, his independence. Pneumonia, January 1987. The notes continued, page after page, each one documenting not just an eviction but a life disrupted. An elderly woman who'd lived in her apartment for 20 years, forced out and dying alone in a nursing home 18 months later. A disabled veteran who'd lost his accessible unit and ended up in a shelter. A family of 4 crammed into a single room after being displaced, the children having to change schools, the parents losing their jobs because the new location was too far from their workplaces. Sophia hadn't just documented the evictions. She'd followed up. She tracked what happened to these people after they were forced out of their homes, and the pattern was devastating. Health declined. Families fractured. Some died within months or years of losing their homes. And in every single case, the building they'd been evicted from was sold at enormous profit to development companies within 6 months. But there was more. Elena found a manila envelope marked "Evidence, Do Not Destroy" in Sophia's handwriting. Inside were photocopies of building inspection reports, official city documents showing that the buildings in question had no safety violations, no code compliance issues, no legitimate reason for the forced renovations that had been cited in the eviction letters. The inspections had been conducted just months before the eviction notices went out, and they'd found nothing wrong. Beneath those were bank records, heavily redacted, many details blacked out, but showing wire transfers from Queensbridge residential properties to accounts belonging to city inspectors, housing board members, and officials in the Department of Buildings. The amounts varied from $5,000 to $50,000, always marked as consulting fees or advisory services. The dates corresponded exactly with the periods when eviction notices were being sent out and buildings were being sold. Elena sat back against her headboard, the documents spread across her bed like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what it was. A crime. A systematic, calculated scheme to defraud elderly and low-income tenants out of their rent-controlled apartments so that buildings could be sold at market rate to developers. Pemberton had fabricated violations, paid off inspectors to ignore the lack of real problems, forced people out of their homes, and profited millions while those same people lost everything. And Aunt Sophia had documented all of it. Elena looked at Luna, who was lying quietly now, her head resting on Elena's leg. Why didn't she report this? Elena whispered. Why hide it? She found the answer in the last document in the box. A letter addressed to Sophia, undated, typed on plain paper with no letterhead. Ms. Castellanos, you have been observed making inquiries about private business matters that do not concern you. This is your only warning. People who ask too many questions about Mr. Pemberton's affairs tend to experience unfortunate circumstances. Your position at the community center could be eliminated. Your rent-controlled status could be reviewed. Your niece Elena's nursing school loans could become more difficult to manage. Stop asking questions. Forget what you think you know. This is the only time we will ask politely. The letter wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. The threat was clear, specific, and terrifying in its casual mention of Elena by name. Sophia had been warned off, intimidated into silence with threats against both herself and her family. But she hadn't destroyed the evidence. She'd hidden it, kept it safe, waited. Elena checked the dates on Sophia's last notes. The final documented case was from 2004, 20 years ago. Harrison Pemberton had died in 2021. Most of the displaced tenants were probably dead by now, too. What good could this evidence possibly do after so much time had passed? Then she saw the document at the very bottom of the box, and her blood turned to ice. It was a notice from building management, dated 2 weeks ago. Elena had received the same notice, had thrown it away without thinking much about it. But now, reading it again in light of everything else she'd learned, every word took on a sinister meaning. Dear residents of Building 7, we regret to inform you that due to necessary structural repairs and compliance with updated city safety codes, this building has been scheduled for comprehensive renovation. All current leases will terminate in 120 days. Residents will be required to vacate the premises to allow for construction. As compensation for this inconvenience, Queensbridge Legacy Properties will provide a one-time relocation payment of $5,000 per unit. Please contact our office to schedule your final inspection. Sincerely, Victoria Pemberton, Managing Director, Queensbridge Legacy Properties. The same company name, the same excuse, the same playbook, and a Pemberton signature at the bottom. Elena grabbed her laptop and searched for Queensbridge Legacy Properties. The company had been founded in 2022, 1 year after Harrison Pemberton's death. Its website showed luxury condo developments across Queens and Brooklyn, all in formerly working-class neighborhoods. The About Us page featured a photograph of a woman in her 40s with severe dark hair and an expensive suit. Victoria Pemberton, Managing Director. Victoria continues her father Harrison Pemberton's legacy of urban revitalization and community development. She was doing it again. Harrison's daughter was using the exact same scheme her father had perfected 40 years ago. and Elena's building was next on the list. Elena heard footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. Heavy footsteps, deliberate, stopping right at her door. Luna's head snapped up, ears forward, a low growl starting in her chest. Elena held her breath. 3 sharp knocks echoed through the small apartment. Then a man's voice, calm and professional. Ms. Castellanos? Building management. We noticed you've been asking the superintendent about the building's history. We'd like to discuss your lease situation and answer any questions you might have about the upcoming renovations. Could you open the door, please? Elena looked at the documents spread across her bed, at Luna's tense posture, at the door that suddenly felt far too thin and inadequate. They knew. Somehow, they already knew she'd found something. The knocking came again, louder this time. Ms. Castellanos? We know you're home. This will just take a moment. Elena's phone was in her hand. She could call 911. But and say what? That someone knocked on her door? That she'd found old documents that implicated a dead man in crimes from decades ago? That his daughter might be continuing his work? The doorknob rattled. Someone was testing it, checking if it was locked. Luna barked once, sharp and warning. The sound seemed to startle whoever was outside, because the footsteps retreated quickly, moving down the hallway toward the stairs. Elena sat frozen on her bed, documents clutched in her hands, understanding with absolute certainty that Aunt Sophia hadn't died of natural causes like the death certificate claimed, and that she might be next. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at her small kitchen table with Luna pressed against her legs, the metal box and its contents spread before her under the harsh fluorescent light. Every sound in the building made her jump. Footsteps above, pipes clanging, the distant slam of a door. Each one could be them coming back. By dawn, she'd made copies of everything. She used the old scanner/printer she'd bought secondhand, feeding page after page through until she had 2 complete sets of documentation. One set went into a padded envelope addressed to herself at the hospital where she worked. The other stayed in the metal box, which she sealed and hid in a new location, inside the oven, the one place she figured no one would look in an apartment this old. At 7 a.m., she walked to the post office 3 blocks away, Luna on a leash beside her. The morning was cold and gray, the kind of October day that promised rain. She mailed the envelope, got a tracking number, and felt the first small measure of relief. Whatever happened now, the evidence existed somewhere beyond her apartment. When she returned home, there was a note taped to her door. Plain white paper, typed message. Ms. Castellanos, please come to the building management office at 455 Riverside Drive today by 5 p.m. to discuss your lease termination. Failure to appear may result in additional complications. Queensbridge Legacy Properties. The address was in Manhattan. Elena looked it up on her phone. A gleaming office tower in a neighborhood where studio apartments rented for $4,000 a month. This wasn't the superintendent's cramped basement office. This was corporate headquarters. They were escalating. Elena called in sick to work, something she rarely did. Then she did what Aunt Sophia's notes had taught her to do. She started reaching out to the other tenants in her building. There were 12 units total. Elena knew some of her neighbors by sight, a few by name. Mrs. Chun in 2B, an elderly woman who'd lived here since the 1990s. Marcus Washington in 3A, a disabled veteran. The Rodriguez family in 1C with their 3 children. She started knocking on doors. Mrs. Chun answered on the 3rd knock, her weathered face suspicious until she recognized Elena. The nurse girl, she said. From Sophia's family. Mrs. Chun, did you get the eviction notice? The one about renovations. The old woman's face darkened. Same thing happened in 97. Different company, same lies. They forced out 6 families that year. Said the building needed work. Never did any work. Just raised the rents and brought in new people. Did you know my aunt was documenting it? Mrs. Chin's eyes widened. Sophia was always asking questions, always taking notes. She came to me once, maybe 10 years ago, asked if I remembered the families who'd been forced out. I told her what I knew. Then she stopped asking. I thought maybe she'd given up. She paused. They got to her, didn't they? Elena felt her throat tighten. I think so. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I need to know if you'll talk. If I can get someone to listen, someone with authority, will you tell them what you saw? Mrs. Chun was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'm 81 years old. I got nothing left to lose. If you find someone who'll listen, I'll talk. Elena went to Marcus Washington next. He was younger, maybe 50, with a prosthetic leg and a purple heart mounted on his wall. He'd gotten the same eviction notice. He'd also gotten a visit the night before. Two men in suits who'd offered him $15,000 to vacate early and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I told them to get lost, Marcus said. This is my home. I got it through a veterans housing program. Took me 3 years to get approved. You know how hard it is to find accessible, affordable housing in this city. His jaw was tight. They can't just push us out. They've been doing it for 40 years, Elena said. She told him about the documents, about the pattern, about Victoria Pemberton continuing her father's work. Marcus's expression went from angry to determined. What do you need? Witnesses. People willing to testify if I can get this in front of someone who matters. Count me in. By noon, Elena had spoken to 8 of the 12 units. 5 were willing to stand with her. The other 3 were too afraid or had already taken buyout offers. But 5 was enough. 5 voices saying the same thing carried weight. The question was, who would listen? Elena spent the afternoon researching. She found the contact information for the New York State Attorney General's office, the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, even a nonprofit legal aid organization that specialized in tenant rights. She drafted an email, attached scanned copies of the most damning documents, and sent it to all 3. Then she did something that scared her more than anything else. She called a reporter. The New York Times had done a series on gentrification and displacement 2 years ago. The lead reporter's name was Jessica Tran. Her email was publicly available. Elena wrote to her, explaining everything in as much detail as she could fit in a single message, and included her phone number. By 4 p.m., she still hadn't heard back from anyone. The meeting at Queensbridge Legacy Properties was in 1 hour. Elena stared at the address on the note. Every instinct told her not to go, that walking into their office was walking into a trap. But refusing to appear would give them ammunition. They could claim she was uncooperative, difficult, a problem tenant. She decided to go, but not alone. Marcus agreed to come with her. So did Mrs. Chun, who said she wanted to look these thieves in the eye. They took the subway to Manhattan, Luna at Elena's side wearing her therapy dog vest. The building at 455 Riverside Drive was exactly what Elena had expected. Glass and steel, doormen in suits, a lobby with marble floors that echoed with every step. The elevator took them to the 14th floor. The Queensbridge Legacy Properties office was all minimalist design and expensive furniture. A receptionist with perfect makeup smiled at them. Ms. Castellanos? Ms. Pemberton is expecting you. Just you, please. Your companions can wait here. They're coming with me, Elena said. The smile didn't waver. I'm afraid that's not possible. This is a private lease consultation. Then I'm not going in. The receptionist's smile finally cracked. She picked up her phone, spoke quietly, then hung up. Ms. Pemberton will allow one additional person. Marcus stepped forward. That's me. They were led down a hallway lined with photographs of luxury developments to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River. Victoria Pemberton sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. She was exactly like her photograph, severe, polished, radiating the kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth and power. Ms. Castellanos, she said without standing. Thank you for coming. And you are? Marcus Washington, Ms. Castellanos' legal advisor. It wasn't true, but it sounded official enough. Victoria's smile was thin. How professional. Please sit. They sat. Luna lay at Elena's feet, watchful. I'll be direct, Victoria said. We're aware that you've been asking questions about building histories and past tenants. We're also aware that your aunt had interests in similar matters. I'm here to offer you a solution that benefits everyone. She slid a paper across the desk. It was a check made out to Elena Castellanos for $75,000. This is 5 times our standard relocation offer. In exchange, you'll vacate within 30 days and sign an agreement confirming that you have no claims against Queensbridge Legacy Properties, past or present. You'll also agree not to discuss any historical business practices of our predecessor company or its principals. Elena stared at the check. $75,000 would eliminate her student loans, would give her a fresh start, would make all of this go away. And if I refuse? Victoria's expression didn't change. Then we proceed with the standard eviction timeline. You'll receive $5,000 instead of $75,000. and we'll be forced to conduct a thorough background check as part of our tenant screening process, which might reveal discrepancies in your aunt's lease history that could complicate your inheritance claim. Legal battles are expensive, Ms. Castellanos, and time-consuming. They can affect employment, creditworthiness, housing applications. It wasn't subtle. It was a threat wrapped in corporate language. Marcus leaned forward. You do realize that what you just described is textbook intimidation and potentially fraud? Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. I described the normal legal process for lease disputes. Nothing more. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. An email from Jessica Tran. Got your message. Very interested. Can we meet tonight? Elena looked up at Victoria Pemberton, at this woman who'd inherited her father's empire and his methods, who thought money and threats could buy silence the way they had for 40 years. No, Elena said. Victoria's expression finally shifted. Surprise, then anger. Excuse me. No, I'm not taking your money. I'm not signing anything. And I'm not staying silent about what your father did or what you're doing now. You're making a serious mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Elena stood. My aunt spent 20 years documenting your father's crimes. She died before she could expose him. I won't. She walked out, Marcus beside her, Luna trotting ahead. Mrs. Chun was waiting in the lobby, her old eyes sharp. Well, we're going to fight, Elena said. That night, Elena met Jessica Tran at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. The reporter was younger than Elena had expected, maybe 30, with short hair and the intense focus of someone who loved a good story. She listened to everything, took notes, examined the documents Elena had brought. This is incredible, Jessica said finally. If even half of this checks out, it's a major investigation. Corruption, fraud, possibly manslaughter if you can prove the stress of displacement contributed to deaths. She looked up. But you understand this will get ugly? They'll come after you. They'll try to discredit you, intimidate you, maybe worse. They already tried, Elena said. I'm still here. The story broke 6 days later. Front page of the New York Times. Decades of displacement. How one real estate dynasty built an empire on illegal evictions. Jessica had worked fast, confirming details through public records, tracking down surviving victims, even getting a city inspector to admit on background that he'd taken money from Harrison Pemberton in the 1990s. The response was immediate. The Attorney General announced an investigation. The Department of Housing launched an audit of Queensbridge legacy properties. Tenant rights organizations rallied. And other victims started coming forward, dozens of them, with their own stories of forced displacement and destroyed lives. Victoria Pemberton held a press conference denying everything. But the evidence was overwhelming. Within 2 weeks, criminal charges were filed. The company's assets were frozen. The planned evictions were halted by court order. Elena's building wouldn't be demolished. The tenants would stay. 3 months later, Elena stood in her apartment, the same apartment Aunt Sophia had lived in for 39 years, and looked at the corner where Luna had first started barking. The dog was calm now, sleeping peacefully on the couch. The hidden space behind the baseboard was empty, its secrets finally revealed to the light. On her table sat a letter from the district attorney's office. They wanted her to testify at Victoria Pemberton's trial. Elena had already said yes. She thought about Aunt Sophia, about the courage it must have taken to document those crimes knowing the risks, about the decision to hide the evidence rather than destroy it, trusting that someday, someone would find it and finish what she'd started. Elena picked up her phone and called Mrs. Chun. The trial starts next month. Are you ready? I've been ready for 30 years, the old woman said. Elena smiled. Then let's finish this. Outside her window, the city continued its endless noise. But inside her apartment, finally, there was peace. Luna stirred in her sleep, peaceful now that the secrets were gone. And Elena understood what Aunt Sophia's note had meant. You'll know what to do when the time comes. She had known, and she'd done it. The corner was just a corner now. Nothing hidden, nothing buried. Just old wood and worn floorboards in an apartment that would remain home for as long as she wanted it. Justice, Elena had learned, didn't always come quickly. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to demand it, it came eventually. And that was enough.